Hello YouTube, Captain Mac here, and welcome to a very special exclusive look at the TFDi design MD-11 that's scheduled to release later this year. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, on the screen in front of you and in my sim as I speak is a working version of the TFDi design MD-11. Now I do want to stress up front that this is an in development version of the aircraft. What does that mean? It's not a beta release. It's not even an alpha release. It is a still in development version of the aircraft that has not been released to anyone. TFDi Design has been extremely gracious in giving me access to this aircraft so that we can make some short videos that highlight the depth of some of the systems that they've modeled in this airplane. Now as we go through that, because it's an in-development aircraft, you're going to see other things that maybe don't function properly. For example, a button that doesn't work when it should, or a light that doesn't go off when it should, or doesn't come on when it should. Different things like that, and we're going to come across those as we go. Don't worry about it. That doesn't mean these are going to be bugs in the aircraft. It is still in development, which means TFDi Design is aware of those things and has already got plans in place to address them. So with all of that in mind, what I'd really like to do with this unprecedented access that we've been given to this aircraft is make a series of short videos that highlight some of the systems and the depth of those systems that have been modeled by TFDi Design. And we're going to start today by doing a video on the Longitudinal Stability Augmentation System, or LSAS. And the reason that I want to start with this system is because it's one of the most intricate systems in the aircraft as far as from a development standpoint is concerned. They had to code this from scratch. There was no real model for them to work from, and so they had to code it and test it and code it and test it over and over again, and they've done an amazing job with it. And it's a pretty complex system. For those of you who aren't aware, the MD-11 was the red-headed stepchild, if you will, of the DC-10. Now, DC-10, like any other aircraft, had a few issues initially, but eventually became to be considered one of the safest aircraft ever. The MD-11, on the other hand, which is essentially an elongated DC-10 with slightly larger wings, wingtips, as you can see, and a smaller horizontal stabilizer, had a few more issues than the DC-10 over its lifespan. And it was that smaller horizontal stabilizer and the stability issues that came with it that created the need for the longitudinal stability augmentation system. So we're going to dive into that today, and I'm going to show you several of the features of this system, what it does for the aircraft, how it makes it much easier to hand fly actually, and a lot safer to fly overall. And welcome to the flight deck, ladies and gentlemen. Now, as I said in the beginning of this video, this is an in-development aircraft, and there are some features of the aircraft that work absolutely phenomenally, and then there are things that still don't work properly. One of those things that hasn't been completed as far as the development standpoint is concerned is the sound set. There are some sounds in the aircraft, but there are currently no engine sounds. And the only reason that I bring it up is because I've put some sort of default static engine cruise noise in the background, just because it would sound weird to your ears to hear complete silence. Believe me, I know, because flying this thing around sounds really strange. But TFDi Design has a very, very high standard on how the sounds are in the aircraft, and they want to make sure they're as realistic as possible, including the engine sounds. And so with that in mind, they're still working on the sound set for the aircraft. So just keep that in mind as you hear the engine sound in the background. You won't hear a lot of changes in pitch to that sound. That's not the sounds of this aircraft. That's just a default background noise I put in there for your benefit. Now, talking about the LSAS, there are basically 6 things that the LSAS provides, and I'm going to list them off here really quick, and then we're going to go through several of them and actually demonstrate them for you. So LSAS provides pitch attitude hold and automatic pitch trim, pitch attitude limiting, pitch rate dampening, speed protection, stall protection, and pitch attitude protection and positive nose lowering. These are the 6 primary features of the LSAS. Now the LSAS is automatically off anytime the autopilot is engaged, as it is right now. When you're below 100 feet radar altitude, except that it's active for pitch attitude protection during takeoff and positive nose lowering during landing. We'll discuss those in a little bit. It's off when the bank angle exceeds 30 degrees, anytime you're doing manual trim operation, and then the pilot can override the LSAS. If you're below 1,500 feet and you apply more than 2 pounds of pressure, that will automatically override it. Or if the pitch attitude protection or positive nose lowering protection are engaged or active, then you need to apply 10 to 15 pounds of force to override the LSAS. And then finally, you can counteract any of the LSAS features during cruise flight or any other phase of flight, especially for overspeed or stall protection, if you use enough manual force in the control column. And it takes approximately 50 pounds of force to defeat the LSAS input. So it's a pretty robust system, but it's also built in with the ability for the pilot to quickly and easily override it, which I think is fantastic. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through several of these, and we're not going to demonstrate every single one of them, and part of the reason for that has to do with that sound set. So for example, we're not going to demonstrate the pitch attitude protection and positive nose lowering. Why? Because those are for takeoff and landing phases of the aircraft. So just briefly, let me describe those to you. During the takeoff rotation, the LSAS will provide pitch attitude protection, or PAP, to reduce the possibility of a tail strike. Now, it doesn't completely eliminate it, because remember, you can override it if you apply 10 to 15 pounds of force. But if you do a normal rotation that's a little harder than it needs to be, the PAP will kick in and keep that tail from striking the runway. I didn't demonstrate that because I don't have an engine run-up sound that would sound appropriate going with the aircraft during takeoff. And I didn't think it was really necessary, because not only can you override it, but in order to demonstrate it, you just do a normal takeoff. You wouldn't see anything. Same thing goes for the positive nose lowering. When you're landing the aircraft, once the weight is sufficiently on the wheels to deploy the main landing gear, to deploy the spoilers, the positive nose lowering will kick in, and all that does really is help bring the nose down to the ground. Again, would kind of be pointless to demonstrate, because you lower the nose to the ground anyway. You wouldn't really notice in the sim. So the pitch attitude protection and positive nose lowering, they do work, but you won't notice anything when we demonstrate them, so I didn't put it into this video. So what I want to talk about with the LSAS now and demonstrate for you is the pitch attitude hold and the automatic pitch trim. Now I want to start by saying that track IR works just fine in this aircraft. I'll turn it on. There's a little jump there, and you can see it works as you would expect it to. I'm leaving it off for the most part because it'll be a lot easier to see what's going on while I'm performing some of these maneuvers. So the pitch attitude hold and automatic pitch trim. When there's no force on the control column and the bank angle is less than 30 degrees, LSAS will hold the current pitch attitude. So right now, because the autopilot is on, the LSAS isn't doing anything. Remember, LSAS is off when the autopilot is on. But once I remove the autopilot, I can maintain straight and level flight relatively easily. Now keep in mind that in the sim there's no real feel to the aircraft, so sometimes you'll get a little climb and a little descent or something like that as you try to really trim it out nice and clean. But if I take the autopilot off right now, and I'll put the track IR on to do that, it's going to make a bunch of noise, as you would expect.
Autopilot.
And then to silence the warning, you need to push the button on the yoke. There we go, the warning is silenced, and you can see, of course, because I haven't put any inputs whatsoever into the aircraft, it's just going to maintain straight and level flight. Now, if I start to make inputs on the yoke, the LSAS is going to hold the attitude of the aircraft by deflecting the elevators as much as 5 degrees to do so. And if you're unaware, 5 degrees of deflection in an elevator is quite a bit, actually. The horizontal stabilizer is automatically adjusted to relieve any sustained elevator deflection and maintain a full 5-degree elevator authority. So right now we're cruising at 20,000 feet. We're on a flight plan, but not really concerned about following it. We just wanted to get up here. You'll notice here on the PFD, and I'll just zoom it in a little bit for you, that the auto thrust system is off when I turn off the autopilot. I don't recall off the top of my head if that's supposed to happen automatically or not, but if it's not, I can assure you that TFDi is going to be addressing it. But either way, there we go. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to demonstrate the pitch attitude hold and the automatic pitch trim. And the way this works is when I start to pitch the aircraft up, it's going to hold whatever attitude I put it at. So if I put it at 10 degrees nose up, it's going to hold 10 degrees nose up once I release the yoke. Remember, it's 2 pounds of pressure to override it in this configuration. So let's just go ahead and let's start climbing a little bit. We'll just bring it to 10 degrees nose up. Nice and easy. And there we go. And I'm off the yoke. And just to show that to you, I'll turn the track IR back on. And so if that's me moving the yoke, that's me not moving the yoke. And you can see that it is quite easily holding. Let me just get the track IR back off for you. Quite easily holding 10 degrees nose up. The speed is also decreasing because I have not changed the thrust. Now the thrust is set to what the auto throttle set it to. I actually have it on full. So if I move my throttles at all, if you look over here on the engine display page, if I move my throttles at all, you're going to see the thrust is going to immediately increase. And there you go. So it's holding 10 degrees nose up. Let's go ahead and level off again. Nice and easy. If you do it really fast, you're just going to overshoot it, and it's starting to descend a little bit. Now we're also slow, so it wants to fly in a nose up attitude. I'm going to let it descend just a little. I'm going to bring that thrust back to about where it was. It was right around 83% on the N1. So I just want to roll it back a little bit because I don't want to be overspeeding the aircraft yet. We're going to, because that's one of the things we're going to test. So as you can see, the aircraft held that nose up attitude without any inputs from me. That's what the pitch attitude hold and automatic pitch trim will do. And I can do that all the way up to 30 degrees. Now, once you get over 30 degrees, then the pitch attitude limiting kicks in, and we're going to cover that next. Alright, so as we continue to cruise along here, the autopilot is still off, and I want to talk about the pitch attitude limiting next. Now the LSAS maintains a pitch attitude that is less than 10 degrees nose down or less than 30 degrees nose up. So we demonstrated very briefly that it can hold 10 degrees nose up, and we know that it'll work just fine, and it'll hold all the way up to 30 degrees nose up. But as soon as you go beyond 30 degrees nose up attitude, it wants to automatically reduce it to at least 30 degrees. So let's go ahead and start pulling the nose up to 30 degrees, which would not be fun to do in this aircraft in real life, I don't think. But we'll just go ahead and pull it up. We're just going to go beyond 30 degrees. So you can see 30 coming up there on the tape. We're losing speed very quickly. And then I'm going to release the yoke just above 30 degrees. And it comes back down, and it should try to hold at 30 degrees. Now because we're losing speed so quickly, it's going to soon start to descend below that, and I'm not going to allow it to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and bring that nose back down so you can see that it automatically reduces its pitch hold to 30 degrees in order to maintain what it considers to be appropriate or maximum. Now of course we're descending rather quickly right now because we need to gain some speed. That's alright. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to get it back level here, and then we'll demonstrate the 10 degrees nose down. Alright, so I didn't take it all the way back down to 20,000 feet, and that's alright. We're just a little below 24,000 feet right now, just getting her to level off. And what I want to demonstrate now is the 10 degrees nose down hold. And to do this, I am going to reduce throttle because we're going to do the overspeed protection in a different segment of the video. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the throttles back, and as I do, I'm going to increase my descent rate. Throttles all the way to 0. And there's 10 degrees, but if I go beyond that, it should automatically start to try and climb back up to 10 degrees. And there it goes. And it wants to hold 10 degrees nose down and no further. Now we're going to overspeed relatively quickly, so we're going to go ahead and pull it back up. And I'll be back in a moment after I level it off, and we'll go into the next phase. Alright, one of the features that we won't cover because it's not something you can really see very well inside the sim, or that you can really see at all, is the pitch rate dampening. So the LSAS increases the apparent static stability to reduce the chance of over controlling the aircraft in pitch. And you can't really see how hard I'm pushing or pulling on the yoke. But the idea here is that throughout the flight envelope, this LSAS is, pitch rate dampening is active. And it has 100% of max dampening when you're above 20,000 feet. So we're right at 20,000 feet right now. So anything above this or right at this even is going to give us 100% effectiveness on this pitch rate dampening. Now, as we excuse me, good old Captain Mac cough in your face. Haven't had one of those in a while, have we? When we start to descend, there's a linear decrease in the amount of pitch rate dampening that the aircraft provides for you until you get to a minimum of 30% once you're below 16,500 feet. So that's what the pitch rate dampening does. Now what we're going to talk about next is the speed protection. Okay, now speed protection works in two different ways. It works for overspeed and it works for underspeed, including a stall condition. So what we're going to start with is we're going to start with the overspeed speed protection. So if the autopilot is not engaged, which it's not, and the auto thrust is not available, whether it's because the autopilot is engaged or otherwise, or the auto thrust is not able to maintain a safe speed, the LSAS speed limiting will engage to provide overspeed or stall protection. Now the overspeed protection is supposed to be accomplished by changing the pitch, but it will only change the pitch if it cannot reduce the speed sufficiently by simply reducing thrust. And so the configuration we're in, we're not going to be able to overspeed enough where it can't just reduce the thrust, and you'll see that. So it's going to reduce thrust. It's going to give us a notification on the PFD here, and that'll bring the speed back down. Now the same is true for stall protection, in that if the aircraft goes into a stall state or close to a stall state, it will automatically provide additional speed, and then if necessary, nose down attitude. And we'll come back to that briefly in just a minute. It is important to note that the LSAS does not provide flap, slat, or gear overspeed protection. So when the aircraft is in a dirty configuration, the LSAS will not provide overspeed protection. So it's really important to note that. Now for this, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in just a little bit here on the PFD so that you can see what's going on. As you can see, the auto thrust is off, and right now we're at 85% on the thrust, and we're pretty close to our maximum speeds here. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring the thrust all the way up to max and let this aircraft continue to increase in speed. And you see we quickly go into the yellow there. It's going to try and start to climb a little because that's just aerodynamics, right? As you increase speed, you increase lift. What we're going to do is we're going to bring the nose down just a little bit to bring in an overspeed condition. Not going to bring it down a lot, just a little bit. And watch right here what happens once we get into speed protection. There immediately, high speed protection. What does it do? Look at our thrust over here. Our thrust is coming all the way back to keep that aircraft from overspeeding. Now I'm continuing to push down on the yoke to keep it in an overspeed condition for the sake of this video here. However, if it cannot keep the speed sufficiently low enough, it will start to raise that nose up. And as you can see, the speed is barely decreasing and we're just about at idle, and the nose is very slowly starting to come up. So it's going to continue to try and bring that nose up just a little at a time, and it should bring it all the way up. So I sat here for a good 30 seconds for your benefit, and it's simply not getting fast enough for it to require the nose to come up. Now, I could put it into a steeper dive, but once you go past 10 degrees, the LSAS is going to be trying to compute between reducing speed and increasing its rate of ascent, and it could cause some issues with the aircraft. It's also a very dangerous condition to put it in. But you can see that the high-speed protection is still working quite well. We've dropped below 10,000 feet, but it's still maintaining the speed just below that red line. So the high-speed protection is working quite well. I'm going to go ahead and get the aircraft back up to 20,000 feet, and then we're going to take a look at the low-speed protection and the stall protection. Alrighty, we're back up here at 20,000 feet cruising along. I just used the autopilot to get it back up here, just made it a little quicker and easier. The autopilot is off now, and what we want to talk about next is the speed protection or the stall protection specifically. So we did the overspeed protection, and you saw how it reduced thrust. Right now, and I'm going to go ahead and just reduce thrust a little bit here because it's a little high and it keeps wanting to climb. Try and get it back around about 83. There's 85. I know that's a little hard to see on the screen sometimes. I'd zoom it in, but Trust me, it's coming down. There's 84 there, so we're looking pretty good. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to take a look at the stall protection. The stall protection works in two different ways. First of all, it works as a speed protection. So if my speed starts to get too slow, it's going to automatically increase the thrust. If that thrust is not capable of maintaining a safe speed, then it'll bring the nose down. Now again, in the configuration we're in, I don't think that I can get it to actually go into stall. It's actually really hard to stall this aircraft unless it's super heavy. When it's super heavy, then it's a little easier to stall it. But because we're not really heavily loaded, I probably won't be able to stall it. But let's just start out with the basic stall protection. What I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom you in here again. Boy, that moved around quick, didn't it? And then I'm going to bring it to just a gentle 5 degrees nose up. Just 5 degrees nose up. And use that pitch attitude hold to just hold it there at 5 degrees nose up. Come on, baby. Well, we'll go with 4. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reduce thrust. And I'll zoom that out just enough so you can see the engine display there. So let's reduce the thrust. And you'll start to see that speed drop quickly. But because pitch attitude hold is kicked in, it's going to hold that 4 degrees nose up, and it's going to continue to hold it even with the thrust all the way down. Now keep an eye here. Once we get down into a low speed condition, keep an eye on the engine display over here. Watch the throttles increase. Now I promise you I'm not going to be touching them. If I had a little camera, you'd see my hands are off all the controls right now, except that I'm going to do a little bit of right bank there to level it off. So we're getting down to the yellow part of the speed tape here. We're going to be in a slow speed condition. There it is, going into the slow speed condition now, and we should see our warning here that tells us we're in a low speed condition, and then the thrust should kick in. Should. So it looks like it tried to lower the nose a little bit to decrease the drop in thrust. So I'm trying to pull the nose up, and it keeps pushing the nose down. So you can just see right here, you can see me moving the yoke. So I'm going to pull the nose up. Come on. And to protect it from a stall, so remember, pitch attitude hold should hold it no problem at say 10 degrees. So let's go to 10 degrees, and I'm going to gently let off the yoke. You can see the front of the yoke coming forward there. Now I'm not holding the yoke, and it pitches down. See, it's automatically pitching the aircraft down, and it should continue to pitch down to regain speed. That's the stall protection. So the way the stall protection works, at 75 to 85% of the angle of attack that's required to engage the stick shaker, it's going to automatically start to lower the nose. Now, if I am overriding the LSAS, remember 10 to 15, or it's only 2 pounds of pressure this high. If I'm overriding the LSAS, so if I force it to hold 10 degrees nose up, you'll see the speed protection portion kick in. And let's just auto flight on. Oh, it's because both of those are down still. All right. It didn't even, auto flight didn't even want to come on. Oh, it kicked in now, didn't it? You dirty little bugger. So that's what it was. Because I had the AFS overrides were both off, it wouldn't kick in the low speed protection. So that's on me. So you can see the low speed protection is working now. So we did manage to put it in a stall condition, so that's that was good because we saw the nose coming down like it should when it goes into right before a stall condition. It's very hard to actually stall it. You would have to continue to forcefully override that LSAS system. But what you can see now is the low speed protection. That's what I was looking for here, was the low speed protection. And because I had that AFS override were both in the off position, the low speed protection wouldn't kick in either. But what you can see over here on the engine display is that we're at 98, excuse me, had a little hiccup there. We're at 98% on our thrust, and we're kind of holding right now because it's still in pitch attitude hold. So it's still trying to hold 10 degrees nose up on the pitch attitude, but it's also got the thrust up as high as it can get it so that it can keep from stalling. So that's your low speed protection and your stall protection in this aircraft. Alrighty, folks, I hope that you enjoyed this demonstration of the longitudinal stability augmentation system that TFDi Design has so meticulously coded into this aircraft. It's a great little system. It's great for the aircraft in real life, and it's really awesome to see it functioning the way that it should here in the sim. Now, I've flown other MD-11s in the sim, as you guys are well aware, and I have not seen the longitudinal stability augmentation system. That's a lot to say. We'll stick with the LSAS. I haven't seen the LSAS function as accurately and consistently as I see it functioning in the TFDi Design MD-11. So I'm really thrilled to see that. Another little cough in your face there. Of course, there were a couple things we didn't cover. I explained why we didn't go over those, but those particular functions do work as intended in the sim as well, and I think that's really great to see. So TFDi Design has done an amazing job with the LSAS and with the aircraft overall. So again, while there are some things that are not functioning yet because it is still in development, this aircraft is much further along than even I realized, and I talk to them regularly, so I think that's pretty great to see. Now, if there are other features of this aircraft, implementations that you guys would like to see demonstrated, put it down in the comments section, and if I'm able to do those, I'll talk with TFDi Design and make sure you know what's fully functional at this point. But the idea is to get several of these done prior to release of this aircraft so that you guys can really get a good flavor for what TFDi Design is doing with this and how intricately detailed they are making this simulation of the MD-11. I'm really thrilled to see it, and I hope you guys are as well. That's it. That's all, and no more, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, as always, keep the blue side up, unless otherwise instructed by ATC. God bless you all, and I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day.